2024. The time is 10 a.m. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Matari, and Duncan. Are there changes to the agenda? Hearing none, public comment. All right, hearing none, we'll get started with item 1, which is our Justice Center update with our Facilities Director, Jeff Wohler.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Jeff Wohler, for the record. You're going to get a heavy dose of me today because quite a few people are on vacation. So I'll just jump right in with the Justice Center update while David Mendez is gone. So there was an updated schedule released by Boughton that you received in your email this week. They are currently tracking all the major milestones, so everything as far as the schedule is on track. They're slightly behind on the first floor interior concrete slab. But it was poured, about 2/3 of it was poured yesterday. They're going to hold off on pouring the entrance towards the Sally Port because that's going to be used for major construction coming in and making deliveries and things. So they're going to rework the schedule a little bit to pour that slab as late as possible to keep construction traffic off of that and just use the gravel that's currently in there. The good news is they are ahead of schedule on framing. You can see all the framing that's gone up, the dense glass on the outside, so the big yellow sheeting on the outside of the building. They're making really good progress on that on the north and west side exteriors. You see the steel stud framing on the exteriors going on the south and east walls. Interior framing is starting. HVAC chases are going in on the interior through the different floors. There was an impact notice that Boughton issued for the canopy demolition on the existing Justice Center. You also received a copy of that in your email, and that's been sent around to staff and has been sent to Pete with the bailiff's office. What they're planning on doing with that is on September 14th, over the weekend, coming in and demoing the existing canopy and then putting a tunnel up, a temporary tunnel, so it really will have very little impact to the existing Justice Center, so they'll maintain access. That work will be done over the weekend, so very little impact to the existing day-to-day work that's happening in that area. There's been some discussion about the reception area down in the existing clerk's area. David Mendez met with Kelly Young to review that. Currently, they have one 28-inch window opening in there. There was conversation about whether it should go, it's kind of a triangular building room in there, whether there should be two different openings, one on each wall. I think what they're landing on is that there will be one large opening that multiple clerks can serve through one opening down there. And I copied Jennifer Locke on that as well, just so she is aware of the conversation that's been happening with her team on that. And that's pretty much it for what's happening with that, if there's any questions you have.
Okay, questions?
No. Thanks.
Bill, questions?
No questions.
All right, thank you. So now it's your update.
All right, I'm going to start with an update to the admin building HVAC system. And Parker, if you want to come join me up here. This is Parker Matthews with Kaufman Engineering.
Hello.
In your board packet, I submitted a report that Kaufman Engineers put together of the existing HVAC, so that's this building right here. Currently, for those that don't know, the heating and cooling comes from the boilers that are in the old courthouse, tunnel under through the tunnel, and then provide the heating and cooling to this building. It's a bit of an old archaic system, and so the idea is to separate this building so that it is on its own, because if that boiler goes down, you basically have two major buildings that are without heating or cooling. And so Kaufman has put together basically a summary of what the existing system is, and then as well as some options for what it would look like moving forward. Basically, there's three options that are presented. The first two options are basically to create a boiler system that is a standalone boiler for this building. And so we would need to create a boiler room in one of the rooms just kind of behind the room that we're in here right now. And so it would be a boiler that would serve basically the current system. So it would be recreating an existing system with the boilers that we have. There's two options for that. One is a gas boiler, one is electric boiler. The third option is going towards what we call a VAV system, and that is an electric system. We would replace the rooftop units. We would essentially abandon the boiler systems. Right now it serves off of what you call a hot deck and a cold deck, and so there's actually two ducting systems in this building where it's bringing hot air in, it's bringing cold air in, and then it's mixing them at the terminal units that are scattered throughout the building. Going with the VAV system, which stands for variable air volume, it's basically how the air gets to the terminal units that are in the building. There's 70 individual units that are up in the ceilings throughout the different floors of this building. Those terminal units would be replaced, and then you'd go with a more efficient rooftop unit that is creating that air that's going to be going down to the units. That third option would be our preference. It's a much better system. It's more economical. It provides greater temperature control, better efficiency, especially over the long run of servicing that. However, the downside to that is there would be more impact on people in the building as we work around and bring the work in here. You'll see a phasing plan that we put together that we put in your packet. There's 15 phases that we created to look at different sections based on how the building is laid out with different departments. And so we would propose working on just sections at a time. We met with Kaufman and Architects West to talk about that, what that would look like. We provided them some data on number of people that were impacted in that. I've met with most of the department heads, not quite everybody, but I kind of have a pretty good gist of impact and such on what that would look like in doing that. Moving forward, if we go with that route, what we probably would do is do some night and evening work, especially departments where there would be significant impact. And then we would, some of it we could probably do during the day. There are some sections that are, like this building and hallways that, we could just close off and, not have this room available for, a few days while we're doing the work in there. Some electrical work needs to happen. Ahead of that, we would put in the units first, then replace the rooftop units up there for that. And so, Parker's here. He can answer any technical questions you might have from reading something in the summary that you had a question about. But, that's kind of the generic summary of what that HVAC system looks like. And so I think today we need your guidance on the direction that we'd want to go. We recommend that option 3. The budgets are in there. This would be about a $1 million to $1.4-ish million project in there. Could be a little bit more with some of that evening and night work, but we would, have to sit down once we get a contractor on board and figure out, narrow down those costs and get a little more detailed on that. But we feel like it's doable within the budget that has been allocated for this project. But today we're hoping to come away with some direction from the board if this makes sense to go with this option 3 as we've presented, or if you have any questions to help give guidance on that.
Okay. Bill?
No questions, but an excellent briefing. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have a preference between the 3 options offered?
Yeah. Oh, you're asking.
I would go with what Jeff is recommending.
Okay. Bruce?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. The idea is to disconnect from the courthouse, right?
Yes.
Does it make sense, or will it be kind of engineered a little bit that, let's say the boiler goes down in the courthouse, because there's this conduit, this connection between the two, that this new boiler here could actually help in that other building a little bit. In case one goes down, you actually have a little bit of redundancy here to keep a building from, for example, if we get a deep freeze, right? If that building, it doesn't have any heat for a few days, then we start dealing with burst pipes and stuff like that. Is that something that's been thought about?
Unfortunately, the way the system is designed, the courthouse building operates off of 2 steam boilers, and I believe that those boilers are redundant. I've not looked too in depth on that system, but typically when we do boilers, we do N+1 redundancy, so you always have at least partial heat if one piece of equipment goes down. So in the courthouse, it's creating steam, and then this building, that steam goes through a heat exchanger where it's converted to hot water where it comes to this building. So the boilers we're proposing in options 1 and 2 would be hot water boilers only. We could not backfeed hot water to the courthouse to then turn it into steam.
Okay.
So it's kind of a one-way street. If we did go for one of the hydronic options, options 1 or options 2, if the boilers, and again, whatever boilers we put into this under those options would be redundant. If for some reason both of those went down, we could open up some valves and reutilize that existing heat exchanger. But there's no way we could put boilers into this building and backfeed to the courthouse.
Okay. And as far as cost to operate, option 3, it looks like it's an all-electric heating system. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a reason why we would want to go to that as opposed to natural gas?
So I think, federally there's a push to go towards electric and for decarbonization. Currently, this building does not have a natural gas service, so we would have to run a new natural gas service to this building. The main issue with moving that way is we could utilize a heat pump, which would significantly reduce the heating loads in the shoulder season. As we get real cold, the electric heat would have to kick in, just because heat pumps are only so good as we get colder. The main issue is that the system that serves this building, as Jeff mentioned, is a dual duct system. So it's simultaneously creating a hot deck of air and a cold deck of air all year round. And that's just kind of an old style of doing things, and it's very inefficient in what it does. So even though natural gas may be saving money a little bit, just because natural gas is cheap in our area, we also have a cheap electric rate. You're wasting lots of money by constantly creating hot and cold, even in the heat of the summer and in the dead of winter. Whereas if we go to this electrified VAV option, you're only creating one stream of air, and then the individual terminal units are adjusting that temperature to fit the zone. So it will reduce your energy usage for the whole building, for the lifetime of the equipment.
So it's less expensive to operate?
You will see energy savings with option 3. It's less expensive to operate. Also, the equipment is cheaper. To replace that dual duct unit on the roof, because it's such an old system, the only way to get one is to get a fully custom air handling unit. Fully custom air handling units are going to run 2, 3, 4 times as much as that kind of a basic packaged unit would do to option 3. The only difference is the labor cost will be higher for option 3 because it's more invasive. We have to go to every single terminal unit. There are 70 in this building, and we have to replace it from a dual deck unit that mixes the 2 air streams to an electric reheat unit. So we also have to run conduit to each unit. So there's going to be more time to do that and more labor costs, but just the sheer amount of money to replace that rooftop unit and keep it dual duct makes that still a cheaper option with option 3.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's what you recommend.
Okay.
Yeah. Just so you know, Greg and I basically came into the meeting that we had with Kaufman, and that was our choice. And as we reviewed it with the team, they're like, that would absolutely be our recommendation as well for the Kaufman team and the Architects West team.
Yes, yeah, we wanted to keep it open just to see what the preferences were for the end user here, but option 3 is, we think, the best option.
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. Seal options for lobby.
Thank you, Walter. Okay, this probably could have dovetailed under the Justice Center expansion update as well, but we're also looking for a little bit of guidance. In the lobby of the new Justice Center, it calls out for a seal. It could be a state of Idaho seal or the Kootenai County seal. And so we need a little direction from the commissioners on if you have a preference for that. If you look around at different courthouse buildings throughout the state, it's a wide mix. It's all over the place. I would tell you that it does specifically call out in the courtrooms behind where the judges will sit is a state of Idaho seal. So currently there would be no Kootenai County seal anywhere in that building, but we need to make a decision so we can start to work on the graphics and get that rolling for that, of whether you have a preference on what that seal would look like in the entrance.
Right. So our choices are no seal, state of Idaho seal, or Kootenai County seal.
Correct.
Okay, so Bill, what is your opinion on that? Do you have a preference?
My preference would be to use a county seal. I think we have a good one.
Okay.
The county seal.
Okay, all 3
Okay.
county seal.
All right, sounds good. Easy enough.
Okay.
I will let the construction team know on that. All right, Sheriff Town Hall. This came from a discussion that we were having with Commissioner Duncan about the Sheriff's Town Hall. There were 3 of them that were scheduled. I think there were a little bit of concern just about the impact and the timing of those, and that's why that was brought on this agenda. I think that has diminished a little bit since this was initially put on the agenda. So there were 3 town hall meetings. One was Wednesday, September 4th from 8:30 to 1:30. One was September 11th from 1:30 to 8:30. And one was Wednesday, September 25th from 4 to 9 p.m. The Wednesday, September 11th meeting, I have now learned is canceled, so there'd be no impact on that. The Wednesday, the 25th meeting from 4 to 9, I don't think, the impact I'm talking about is parking. When you bring potentially 100 people in during the business hours, when we, know that parking is really, really limited in this area, what would that look like? I did also find out from talking with the Sheriff's Department that the actual meeting time is from 10 to 12:30, so they had it booked from 8:30 to 1:30. So really the impact of that town hall meeting would be the 2.5 hours. I know it has been published. I know they would like recording of that meeting, but I think we just wanted to bring it here for any discussion about if there's been forethought into parking. And it sounds like from the Sheriff's Office, not necessarily on that, but maybe something in the future we should think about or have that discussion here.
So what's your recommendation?
I think, it's probably something, based on the fact that it's been published, maybe we need to encourage our county employees that day to park across the street and do what we can to, make parking available, park down the street, if they can for that. But in the future, I would suggest that we really think about that and look at, alternate locations that might have more parking available, whether something at the fairgrounds or something at the new Kootenai North building. And they can hold about 100 people in that conference room they have out there. So thoughts on that for the future, but based on the fact that it's been published, maybe encourage our staff to just think ahead on that day and know that there's going to be some impact.
Yeah. And we've had to do that before, park across the street for different events and everything, but it's just something that we do need to be aware of going forward, especially on jury trial days where we just really have no parking at all. So, thoughts on that?
If this is that important, then I will defer to your recommendation for this. I assume that you'll be keeping track of parking for other events.
Yeah, when we become aware of them, we'll look at that.
Does this mean that we should create a policy where if someone wants to have an event, we run it by you first?
Probably be a good idea, or make sure that it. I think that's part of the reason we're having that discussion publicly now, is that so people can really be aware of the impact of parking.
Then we should figure out a procedure mechanism in place, so anyone who wants to utilize this room, they'll run it by you. We'll give you all the details, how many people are going to be here, and then you can do a calculation based upon how much parking we have. And then I would encourage you to keep in mind the different parts of the month, because that also affects the parking. And then a mechanism to let the employees know on certain days that they should find other, encourage them to try to find other parking. So I look forward to seeing what you put together.
Yeah, sounds fair.
Okay. All right. Bill, did you have anything to add on that?
Well, I'm thinking about how it's done at the resort when there's a major event. And they actually have people out there if you say you're here for this or that, they direct you where you should park. And that works very well. But the resort's been doing that for years.
Okay. All right. Item 3, KC North Remodel. And Tom is not with us today, so Jeff.
Yeah, so I'll just keep going with this one. So Kootenai North is in their finishing stages right now with the contract with Stancraft. This week they're wrapping up painting, installing ceiling grid. County employees are out there installing the low-volt cabling. Carpeting base is going in, a couple doors that need to be installed. In the evidence room, the one charcoal filter, the very specific filter, came out of the existing sheriff's office and has been moved into one of the evidence rooms. And then once evidence is brought over from the second evidence room at the existing, then the mechanical contractor will go back and get that second charcoal filter, install that in the second room of the new area, and then we'll make that transition. So that's kind of a phased transition. So with that being said, Stancraft will be looking to begin their final inspections at the end of this week. One area is the fire alarm control panel. Needs to be replaced. We learned that that is not operational as we took it over from Kootenai Electric. And that is on the business meeting agenda for you guys to approve that this afternoon. And then that'll be about a week and a half out. So that'll probably hold up the fire inspection from that, but we'll get on that as soon as that is passed. The elevator is complete. That is scheduled for inspection. Mechanical inspections have passed. Electrical inspections have passed. Plumbing inspections will be later this week. And then next Monday, we are scheduled to do our punch walk with the contractor where we go through and just make a punch list for the remaining items that are going through there. So nearing the end of that, and then they are going to be, the Sheriff's Office will be working on a phased approach starting after Labor Day to start to move folks in over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, questions for Jeff? All right, thank you. Item 4, update on jail pod project.
Okay, again, this is me. So we had a meeting with Sletton last week. We are still looking at the budget overall. I think I presented a couple weeks ago. The budget was looking that it might be around a 9.8. We're now down to about a 9.2, and we're still looking for some cost savings on that. They are looking at costing out some different options for the outdoor rec center. The way the jail exists right now, there's some in the outdoor rec where they go walk around and can exercise outdoor. Some of them have a roof over it. Some of them just have mesh over it. So we're costing out different options to see if there's a cost savings in that. Even if we go with the mesh, there still needs to be some steel support to hang that. So we're trying to look for the different cost savings on that, and we'll have more information at next week's meeting on that. In that budget now, we have a better idea of the city permitting fees. We estimate those to be about $540,000. So unfortunately, there's about $500,000 in permits that we have to do with that. $411,000 of that are the sewer cap fees. $50,000 of that are impact fees, and then the rest are the general building permit plan review fees. So unfortunately, there's a pretty significant cost there. Those are included in that budget now. We have a better idea of what our material testing will be, what we will put into our soft costs. Those will be about $30,000. We're holding $50,000 for the IT cameras and cabling that the county needs to provide. There will not be a lot of furnishings because it's a jail, so most of it is just built into the cells where it's the steel toilets and beds and a built-in stool that goes into each cell. So there's really very little furnishings that need to go with that. Any mattresses the jail would provide out of different funding for that. We're holding a $200,000 contingency for that project in that current budget as well. And then the one thing that we're trying to do, if we can get this budget down, it's going to be carried as an option right now, or an alternate, is the old boilers in the jail have never been updated. So when we did the expansion in, I think it was 2010 or 2012,
Oh, the first one, because we did another one in 2018.
Yeah,
so.
When we did that expansion, they never expanded the heating and cooling for it. So when people take showers, they run out of hot water. And so that is something that needs to be completed at some point as a pretty high priority. We're trying to do it out of the budget for this project, but we'll probably present that as an alternate when we bring the final guaranteed maximum price to the commissioners for approval. And that's we're estimating about $200,000 in that. That's not included in that 9.2 that we're currently at. We do believe there'll be some other additional cost savings as we get into the details of the drawings where, contractors really know exactly what they're bidding, because right now we're still at 50% drawings. And we believe there'll be some cost savings with some of the contractor contingencies and the design contingencies that will hopefully continue to bring that down. So we're continuing to push them on that, and then over the next couple of weeks, as we get further along, they will present a guaranteed maximum price that we'll bring to the board. So that's kind of where we're at today.
Great. Questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
No questions.
All right. Item 5, quarterly financial statement presentation with our finance director, Brandy Falcon.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brandy Falcon for the record. Our quarterly financial statements have been posted on our website and issued as required by statute. They're prepared by our senior accountant, Kyle Westerman. In the future, I'll probably have him start presenting these instead of me. So this will just be short and simple. So I just wanted to point out on page 20, we are now 99% collected on our budgeted property tax for the year. Our actual collections of tax not only include our FY24 levied tax, but that also includes people paying any back taxes that they owe the county. So the tax we've collected isn't all attributed to just this year's levy. It's also people paying prior years that they owe the county. And then on page 23, all of our non-property tax revenues, we're 84% collected on all of those. And then on page 27, I just wanted to quickly point out where we're at in terms of our collections on our larger non-tax revenues. So for state revenue sharing and sales tax, you see the footnote states that as of the time we published this quarterly, the state of Idaho still had not remitted to us our sales tax and revenue sharing. They have gotten in the habit of being very behind on their payments. So you will see our third quarter and fourth quarterly payments in the next quarterly that we issue after year end. In terms of our liquor, I'm thinking we're probably going to be under collected on that for this year by a little bit, just because, as I said in the budget meeting yesterday, liquor sales are trending down nationwide and throughout the state. Interest, so far, we have earned $1.9 million greater than our budgeted interest amount, so that's good. And currently, we're at a unrealized market gain with our investments. And then starting on page 28, these are the budget warnings for departments that are close to or over certain budgets. Most of these are just people that spent their budget on capital projects all at one time. The only one I wanted to point out was on page 28, the airport is over budget primarily due to some stuff going on with that tower project. So in terms of the contract the airport has with Tower Tech, the board approved a fund balance appropriation of $450,000 to pay for that contract. The airport has overspent that by $35,000. That's because the Forest Service took longer to get involved and start paying their share of that agreement. Currently, there is nothing in writing requiring the Forest Service, from a contractual standpoint, to contribute anything financially towards that contract. So that might be something the board wants to consider. I brought that idea up to the airport, and now I'm bringing it to you. You know, wouldn't harm anything to have it in writing that they have to pay a certain amount every year of that tower agreement. And then, in addition to that, the board approved the $450,000 for the Tower Tech contract, but there was no request made or approval by the board for any construction, like fund balance appropriation for construction. So far the airport has spent $72,000 in construction costs on that tower, and we've asked them to come to you and ask for fund balance appropriation from their fund balance to pay for that construction. So I'm just kind of waiting for them to bring that to you, because right now it does show they're over budget due to those construction costs. And then, as always, on page 30, District Court, under the Trial Court Administrator, our DUI court and our court interlock fund are over budget due to court-mandated drug testing and court-ordered, professional services and psych evals. So that's common to see that every year. Lastly, on the blue and white page, page 31, that's where we have our grant schedule. This just shows grant awards and expenses to date. So for example, towards the bottom of page 31, you can see that for ARPA, so far live to date, we've spent $10.2 million of our $32 million in ARPA. Most of that has gone towards our justice expansion. Any questions?
I'm just curious if you have any expenses that you can foresee coming in before the end of the fiscal year for some of the things that might be below budget.
Oh, any budgets, like expenses, I think will be below budget.
Well, no, that are, sometimes we have expenses that are front-loaded in the year.
Oh, like large things that hit towards the end of the year. Nothing comes to mind other than towards the end of the year, people start to see that they have money left, and they like to buy a lot of things towards the end of the year. Yeah. So other than that, that's something my office tries to watch really closely and make sure that they don't exceed what they have left. At the end of the year, we do struggle to get all of our invoices on our big capital projects in. So we usually harass the departments and the contractors because we have to have all of those September 30th invoices into us. But I can't think of a specific expense that hits right at year end other than those.
Okay. And then it sounds like we're going to have some money coming back.
Mm-hmm. We are. I never give an estimate on the record because there's literally hundreds of adjustments that my office does at year end in order to bring our books into accrual accounting status. So we pull a bunch of expenses back into FY24. We move a bunch into the next year. We don't even collect all our revenues until November. if the state is on time. So there's just a lot. But I know at least that's why I have that interest in there, so you can see that we know on interest alone we're doing well, and we always have salary savings. So.
Well, good.
And I have in years past sent out just a brief memo saying, just because you have money left over doesn't mean you have to spend it. It's more eloquently put than that. But that's seemed to have worked in the past.
Yeah, maybe for your board departments, that would be good. So, thank you.
All right. If there's no questions for Brandy, we can go on to items. Bill?
I would just like to say one of the reasons that Brandy has such a good job, she doesn't talk pie in the sky off the cuff. She does an analysis, and then we find out where we're at, which really enhances the information we get.
All right. Item 6, assessment error, and we have Julina Hildreth from our auditor's office.
Good morning. I am here to discuss, propose, I suppose, some sort of change in the process when you guys approve, and I say you guys, the board, approves tax cancellations and value corrections. I gave you guys a copy of a value correction, and then the underlying effect that it had on the taxing districts and that were involved, obviously. And then the third piece of paper is their actual budget for the year. And so I guess my point is that you guys get these notifications to correct value, but on this form, all it says is value, which unless you guys really do a lot of homework on all of these, you're not gonna know what the implications are. And I feel like, and this obviously is just my opinion, but you should be making educated decisions, and I don't feel like you have enough information there to make an educated decision. Now, when it's a value change, I know that you don't have a lot of options, but there are more than just value changes, or like an error, let's say an assessment error. But there are other types that, if someone doesn't make their, the deadline to be not an exempt property, and you guys go ahead and do that after, and especially on prior years, it really mucks up the process for not only the treasurer, but also us, because in the clerk's office, as you can see here, this was an example of an assessment error, and it happens, but the implications were $11,900 of taxes that had already been paid out, and now we have to claw back from the taxing districts. And in the instance of West Rathdrum URD, we have to take back $7,600. They only get $9,600 in a year. So that means that they're probably not going to get income for the whole year because of this situation. And so I'm not here to pick, that there was a mistake made or whatever the case is. I just think that ultimately for every one of these, I really feel like this form doesn't give you guys enough information. I mean, you're making decisions based on value, but do you really, and I'm not trying to dig at you and say that you don't quite understand, but you're not given the numbers. So $2 million is a lot, but I think you guys need to see what it really means.
So Kootenai Cooperative, I would need to know more details because obviously it's been a few months since we did this. We are not in the habit of just willy-nilly canceling and changing valuations. It's usually based on an error that needs to be corrected or state law. So right. This one in particular, I'd have to go back and see exactly why it was valued in the first place if it wasn't supposed to be.
No, and I'm not saying that you're being willy-nilly. All I'm saying is that you're not seeing the whole picture. I mean, because $2 million, when you made this decision, did you know who that was affecting? and how much it was affecting them.
But I don't know that that would change our decision, is the problem.
But, right, but don't you think you should have all the pieces before you make a decision?
We can do that. We've got about 100, is it tomorrow?
And
Yes.
all I'm saying is that, because it creates, I mean, regardless, yes, in this instance, it's going to happen, and it does. But I still think that in good conscience, you're not just messing with, or looking at value, you're not just adjusting value. And that's, when you look at this, that's all you guys are doing, but that's really not all you're doing.
No, but we make that comment in the meetings often that, hey, if we make these changes, these are the taxing agencies that are going to be negatively affected. But again, I don't know on this one specifically, it's a utility. So to me, we made it because we had to, not because we're,
Right.
blessing them.
Well,
So
yeah, but I think what Julina is trying to say is that, this form just doesn't really share any other potential. It doesn't give specifics on the impact. And so, yes, we know that there's an impact, but we don't really know what that impact is and to
Right.
whom. And that's,
I just would say that even if we knew that impact, which I'm totally fine, if you guys want to give us that information on the 100 we're doing tomorrow, that's fine, but if we have to do it, we have to do it.
Right, but
That makes sense.
I guess, and I understand what you're saying, but I think, I don't know, I just know that, let's rewind back to October when we had the $53 million one.
Mm-hmm.
Had you guys had this information, it wouldn't have slipped through the cracks, and we would have been able to do it in a timely manner. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it would have been, I would hope that you would have seen, and you would have seen that it made such a huge impact that.
But we still had to revert it back to its
that's
original
not the
value.
point.
If I can interject, Alicia Lynch with the Auditor's Office. The process is running well, and this isn't about a breakdown in the system. When we're talking about having you have this information, you would be questioning it in a public meeting. It would invite discussion between the departments. So while your hands are tied and you have to make the decision, we will already be moving and planning for the impact of that. We can roll out communication to the districts that are affected. Right now, that's the only part that's really missing from this process. I don't want to get into pointing fingers, but that's kind of how it becomes, where one group is saying, well, the board approved it, and the other is saying, well, the assessor made the error. There's nothing in our system to actually tell Rathdrum URD that we're taking most of their money. There's nobody who's responsible for that. And if you were making this decision with this information at the time, you can say, I direct so-and-so to do such. We should make this open and transparent for the district. Right now, it's just buried in the paperwork and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to have a sheet like this every single time where it looks that we can look at the different taxing entities, but does somebody have the ability to do that?
Well, I mean, yeah, we have the data, it's just who's going to do it.
Right. So, Dyson?
I was just going to comment that we do have our meetings where we cover these individually and we go through the AINs. If there's some other form of information that the board wants or needs, or some kind of threshold at some point where we're going to pull it out and specifically talk about it or something like that, just let me know and we can make that change to the meetings that we've been having. If there's some kind of dollar effect to a taxing district that triggers a deeper discussion, I'm happy to have those. They are a public meeting. People are welcome to come and comment. I'm not sure what else we can do other than that, especially in this case. Our hands are tied. We had to. It's an operating property. We wouldn't put a cancellation in front of the board if we thought it was arbitrary. Typically, we've already done our due diligence. We've verified. We've done the form, and by the time it makes it all the way to you, it has undergone a review, which is it's a review form. So if there's some other change that the board would like, I'm amicable to do it. Happy to be more transparent, as long as it's within our capabilities to, summarize that data and reasonably get it together for, the 100 cancellations we have. I would say a blanket statement of we're going to do this for every single one would probably be pretty challenging to put together on a monthly basis. But if there's some kind of criteria by which you guys want to see something else, again, happy to add to the transparency of the process if we can.
Okay, so do we want to talk about a
Commissioner.
threshold where you would want?
well, how granular is your data?
And I'd like to interject as well on that as well. I'd like to echo what Alicia is saying and also what Commissioner Duncan is saying. I think the process is working. You have to make the decision anyway, regardless. I don't see what's missing at this point in time other than the prompt that comes from the board to ask that question. And so perhaps when these items are placed on the agenda, perhaps more lead time is needed. And at the point in time in which it's entered onto the agenda, perhaps we don't have the information to provide that granular level of detail. That would come from either the clerk or the treasurer's office, but perhaps they could work together to provide. Now, I'm not suggesting more work on their part, but if that's something that the board desires, if that's the direction the board wishes to take, then it's an effort of coordination in advance so that you have the information at the meeting when you make the decision. But that information would not come from the assessor's office.
So how would we get the information then?
Well, I mean, it would either come from us or the treasurer. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to point fingers at me here.
No.
In my opinion, that's a treasurer function because it's tax, but that's something that we would have to work out. I mean, I know that a lot of it is inevitable, but it really is a lot of extra work. And I just think that, in my opinion, I think it's important. Numbers don't lie for you to see the change, the things that are.
And the auditor's office does quarterly calculate the tax receivable. That would be something very easy for us to communicate to you. We already generate the document so you can see what each district asked to levy for and how much they've collected. Just having that information may help you be better informed on what it looks like to cancel their taxes.
Yeah, again, though, I mean, I haven't really found it with this board that we've been like, oh, you come before us, we're going to cancel it. I mean, it has to be a verified hardship or it has to be a mistake on the county. And so a lot of them are homeowners exemptions. State law requires that we give the homeowners exemption all the way back to the first of the year, which I think is ridiculous, but hopefully we're going to get a ruling on that soon, because even prorating would be very, very helpful to the taxing districts. So, yep. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you want to put a threshold on it? Anything over 500,000? I just don't. It's great information, but
It's not actionable.
yeah.
And it's not going to change the way that we look at the properties. And so then the next question is, how quickly can this information be put out, put in a format that it can be used so it saves you time. I mean, hopefully you're not looking these things up one by one. Maybe a report can be run based on AIN after the board approves these things or something where, you just don't have to go through it one by one because it's already in electronic format. So now it's just a matter of running a report that gives you what you need to expedite the process, if you will. That might be, because if it's not going to change our opinion on it, we'll get to see it, and it's nice to look at, but I don't think we could go, well, this is too much money for the Rathdrum URD, and so we're going to keep it at the same valuation.
Well, I don't think the object is to change your ruling on it, but to trigger the process to communicate between the departments. Right now, I get a blanket of just everything that you approve, and I look to see if it's a giant change in valuation, but we're not digging down into the lower level. We don't know in our office how it's affecting the taxing district until the treasurer turns over the taxes and we realize we have to take $7,000, almost $8,000 away from the district, and there's no conversation of how do we communicate that to the district because nobody wants to take responsibility for it.
So let's just use an example. After tomorrow's meeting, if we have any valuation changes over what threshold, then we would be able to mark those and specifically say, hey, please be on the lookout from our agenda items 6, 12, and 13, so you'd be able to make that communication.
I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
But Commissioner, are you going to know the lower levels, lower layers, how that's going to affect a certain taxing district?
I won't need to, because we'll just need to know what that threshold is. Is $500,000 a good threshold? Is $100,000 a good threshold? Is $2 million a good threshold? So to me, that would be the simplest way for us to be able to trigger that, so it goes, so we're able to communicate better with these smaller taxing agencies.
But just so you're aware, we're really, the focus on, in this issue is prior year. So it's when we've already collected the money and we've already paid it out to the districts. So anything that's current year, like 23, I mean, you know, that can be changed in this, updated in the system, and they can do a credit or do, you know, the treasurer's office can handle it there. It's when we have to literally claw back money from a district to pay back a taxpayer that it becomes an issue.
Okay, so anytime it's a prior year, that would trigger the...
Right.
I would suggest it's multiple criteria. It's order of magnitude, it's magnitude of impact to a taxing district, and its prior year.
So what are those thresholds? What are they
It's a
specific?
board policy decision.
Okay. I would just argue that we just do prior years and make it simple. We can look at them and decide.
So we'll start tomorrow and figure that out, and then, you know, I mean, we're always open to make things better and easier. It's just, I don't like cancellation of taxes meetings, do you?
Well, we have to do them.
I know.
So there you go.
Yep.
It doesn't matter whether we like them or not.
All right, Bill, any questions?
No questions at all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, item 7, Northern Idaho Crisis Center, our BOCC representative change. So, Bill, you're handling this one?
No, I'm not.
Okay, you're the current Crisis Center representative, correct?
Right. I want to know, how did that appear on the agenda? Who put it on there?
There was an email that you had said, yes, you wanted somebody else to take your position. It stems from an original email from Sandra Mueller on August 7th.
Okay. I wasn't aware. I'm sorry.
Okay. So did you want to give up your seat, or did you want to keep it?
I would rather continue.
Okay, that's simple. So no action needs to be taken. Public comment. Anybody on the line? Nope. All right, 10:48, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.